Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
So it's April 2025 now, and well, AI is just everywhere, isn't it? You really can't miss it.
No, you can't. It's in language models we use, making financial decisions, helping doctors.
Right, even autonomous vehicles, it feels like it's really embedded in daily life.
Definitely. And that rapid spread, while, exciting in many ways, it naturally brings up these big questions. How do we handle it responsibly?
Exactly. Which leads us straight into today's topic, AI ethics. We've got some really interesting source material here looking at the moral side of artificial intelligence.
Yeah, the whole landscape.
So our mission today is basically to pull out the key ideas, understand the principles, and maybe grapple with some of the challenges of making AI work for us, ethically speaking.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, so let's start there. With AI being so, well, present, what exactly is the field of AI ethics trying to tackle? What's its main goal?
That's really the core question, isn't it? Fundamentally, AI ethics is about setting the moral compass for artificial intelligence.
A moral compass?
Yeah, like guidelines for everything from how it's designed and built to how it's used out in the world and even how we eventually stop using a system.
Yeah.
It's really about ensuring fairness, making sure there's accountability if things go wrong, striving for systems we can actually understand.
Transparency.
Transparency, exactly. And protecting people's privacy in this very data-hungry environment. The ultimate aim, it's guiding this incredibly powerful tech so it actually benefits people safely and justly.
The sources we looked at really emphasize that this field, AI ethics, it's moving fast. It's described as rapidly evolving. Why the urgency? Why now, in April 2025?
Well, the urgency stems from a pretty fundamental shift, I think. AI isn't just a background tool for, say, crunching numbers anymore.
Right.
It's increasingly influencing, sometimes even making decisions that directly hit people's lives, real-world consequences.
Like what kind of decisions?
Oh, things like who gets shortlisted for a job interview, whether you get approved for a loan, access to certain healthcare treatments, even outcomes in the justice system.
Wow, okay. That's significant.
It really is. And this growing decision-making power, it forces us to ask some pretty deep questions.
Such as, what are the big worries here?
Well, there's the very real risk of bias. Algorithms aren't neutral. They can pick up and even amplify existing societal biases if we're not careful.
Leading to unfairness.
Exactly. Unfair or discriminatory outcomes. Then there's the potential for misuse, think sophisticated surveillance, or generating convincing disinformation, fake news.
That's scary stuff.
It is. And we also have to consider the longer-term picture, as systems become more autonomous. Plus, these aren't just local issues, they're global. Everyone's grappling with this.
You mentioned Canada earlier. How is Canada approaching this?
Right. Well, Canada's definitely in the mix, thinking about responsible AI. There's the proposed legislation, the Artificial Intelligence and Data Act, or AIDA.
That's part of Bill C-27, right? Being discussed in GET now.
That's the one. It's specifically looking at setting rules, especially for what they call high-impact systems, which shows, government recognition that we need to be proactive.
So it's not about stopping innovation.
Not at all. The idea really is that AI ethics isn't a barrier. It's more like a compass. It helps guide innovation in a direction that aligns with our societal values. Responsible innovation.
Okay, that makes sense. The source material lays out several key principles for AI ethics. Could you maybe walk us through some of the most important ones? Let's start with fairness and non-discrimination.
Absolutely. This one is critical. Like I mentioned, AI learns from data. And if the data we feed it reflects historical biases related to race, gender, age, whatever, the AI can learn those biases.
It potentially make them worse.
Potentially, yes. It can pick up these patterns and perpetuate or even amplify them in its decisions.
Can you give some concrete examples? Where does this unfair bias actually show up?
Sure. We've seen it in hiring tools where algorithms might favor candidates similar to past hires, inadvertently screening out qualified people from underrepresented groups.
Okay.
Or loan applications where historical data patterns might lead to biased creditworthiness assessments. We've seen studies showing racial bias in criminal justice risk assessment tools.
That's deeply concerning.
It is. And in healthcare, diagnostic tools might be less accurate for certain demographics if they weren't trained on diverse enough data. Even online advertising can sometimes target opportunities in ways that reinforce inequalities.
Wow. It sounds like even figuring out what fairness means in each case is tricky.
You nailed it. Fairness isn't simple. There are multiple mathematical and philosophical ways to define it, and crucially, sometimes these definitions actually conflict with each other.
So optimizing for one type of fairness might hurt another.
Precisely. So there's a ton of work going into just defining and measuring fairness appropriately for different contexts, and just as importantly, developing technical methods to spot and mitigate bias in data and models.
Okay, moving on. Another principle mentioned is accountability and responsibility. This feels particularly thorny when an AI messes up.
It really is complex. When an AI system makes an error or causes harm, tracing responsibility is tough. Who's accountable?
Yeah, is it the software developers?
Yeah.
The company using the AI? The user?
Or even down the line, could the AI itself hold responsibility? Our current legal frameworks don't really allow for that AI isn't a legal person, so responsibility usually falls on the humans or organizations involved.
But figuring that out must be hard.
Extremely. But we need clear lines of accountability. It's essential for building trust. We need ways to audit AI decisions, understand failure points, assign liability fairly, and crucially provide recourse for people who are negatively impacted.
Then there's transparency and explainability, often called XAI.
Yeah.
The material talks about the black box problem. What's that about?
Right, the black box. This refers to how some very powerful AI models, particularly deep learning ones, work in ways that are incredibly difficult for humans to follow.
So you get an answer, but not really why.
Exactly. Data goes in, a decision comes out, but the intricate calculations inside are often opaque. And this lack of transparency is a huge problem in high-stakes areas.
Like healthcare.
Definitely healthcare. A doctor or a patient needs to understand why an AI suggested a certain diagnosis or treatment. Same in the justice system, you need to understand the basis for an AI-informed decision for due process.
So how do we crack open this black box? What's being done?
That's where explainable AI, XAI, comes in. It's a whole field dedicated to developing techniques to make AI reasoning more understandable.
What kind of techniques?
Things like methods that highlight which input data points were most influential for a decision, or tools that try to provide simplified explanations or visualizations of the model's logic. Think LIME, SAP, attention mechanisms.
So progress is being made.
Yes, progress is definitely being made, but it's still a major technical challenge. Getting meaningful explanations without hurting the AI's performance is tricky. It's a very active research area.
Let's talk about privacy. That's a huge concern for almost everyone these days. How does AI ethics intersect with privacy?
Heavily, AI, especially machine learning, thrives on data, often vast amounts of data, including very personal, sensitive information.
Right.
So AI ethics tackles the risks. Unauthorized data access, data breaches, the potential to re-identify people even from supposedly anonymized data.
And surveillance.
And surveillance, absolutely. Or using AI to infer private details about individuals without consent. While laws like GDPR or PIPEDA here in Canada set legal floors, ethics often pushes further.
How so?
It emphasizes principles like data minimization, only collecting what's truly necessary and giving individuals meaningful control over their information.
Are there technical fixes being worked on for privacy too?
Yes, quite a few promising approaches. We talked about federated learning before, training models on decentralized data.
Right, so the data stays local.
Exactly. There's also differential privacy, which adds statistical noise to masked individual data points while still allowing useful analysis. And even more advanced concepts like homomorphic encryption, which could let calculations happen on encrypted data. These privacy-enhancing technologies, or PTs, are really key.
Okay, another principle. Safety and security, sometimes called reliability and robustness. What's the ethical dimension here?
This is fundamental. AI systems need to work reliably and safely, especially when they operate in the real world. They need to handle unexpected situations, errors, weird inputs, without failing catastrophically or causing harm.
And security.
Security is paramount. We know AI systems can be vulnerable to adversarial attacks, subtle manipulations of input data that cause the AI to make big mistakes.
Like fooling an image recognition system.
Precisely, or worse. Ensuring robustness against these attacks and general safety, especially for autonomous systems like self-driving cars or drones, is a massive ethical imperative. Lives could depend on it.
Then we have human autonomy and well-being. This sounds like it's about ensuring AI helps rather than harms us on a more personal level.
That's a good way to put it. The goal is for AI to augment human capabilities, support our well-being, not undermine our independence or control.
What are the concerns?
Well, think about manipulative algorithms recommendation systems that might push us towards addictive behavior or create filter bubbles.
Uh-huh.
There's de-skilling, relying so much on AI that human skills atrophy, or replacing human judgment in critical areas without proper oversight. The human in the loop concept is important here. It's about designing AI that respects our agency and considers the broader societal effects on jobs, social interaction, our sense of self.
Finally, the sources mention human values alignment or benefit alignment. This sounds more future-focused.
It is, but it's becoming increasingly relevant. As AI gets more powerful, potentially more autonomous, how do we ensure its goals align with our values, with human well-being?
That sounds incredibly difficult. How do you code human values?
That's the billion-dollar question, isn't it? It's technically hard. How do you specify complex, often fuzzy human values, and ethically complex, whose values take priority when there are disagreements across cultures or individuals?
And this ties into concerns about superintelligence.
To some extent, yes. When people discuss artificial general intelligence, or AGI, and potential existential risks, this alignment problem is often central. Ensuring highly capable AI systems are fundamentally beneficial and controllable is, well, a long-term grand challenge for the field.
Okay, those principles give us a solid framework. But it helps to see them in action. What specific ethical dilemmas are cropping up right now in the real world?
Oh, plenty. We already touched on biased hiring tools potentially screening out women or minorities based on past patterns. Facial recognition is a big one. There are documented disparities in accuracy across race and gender, leading to wrongful arrests in some cases. Plus, huge privacy and civil liberties implications, even here in Canada. In criminal justice, risk assessment tools used for sentencing or parole have shown significant racial bias. Then there's the autonomous vehicle trolley problem. How do you program a car to choose between, say, occupant safety versus hitting a pedestrian? There's no universally right answer, but someone has to code a priority.
A difficult choice.
Very. And with generative AI, I think GPT-4, DAE-3, we're seeing the potential for mass misinformation. Deep fakes, propaganda, generated text that's hard to distinguish from human writing.
And social media.
Social media algorithms, often designed purely for engagement, can end up promoting polarizing, divisive, or even harmful content because that's what gets clicks.
And healthcare, too.
Yes, healthcare AI can exhibit bias affecting diagnostic accuracy for different groups, or algorithms used for allocating scarce resources like organs or hospital beds could disadvantage certain communities if they rely on biased historical data reflecting existing inequalities. These aren't theoretical problems, they're happening now.
It's clear these are tough challenges. So what's being done? How are different groups trying to address these ethical problems?
It's really a multi-pronged effort. First, as we discussed, there are lots of ethical principles and guidelines being published.
From governments, academics, companies?
Exactly. OECD, UNESCO, the Montreal Declaration, corporate principles. They set a good high-level tone, establish shared values like fairness, transparency, accountability, but often they lack specific how-to guidance.
So moving beyond just principles, what about enforcement?
That leads to regulation and legislation. Governments are stepping in because voluntary guidelines aren't always enough.
Like the EU AI Act.
Precisely. It takes a risk-based approach, stricter rules for high-risk AI applications. And as we mentioned, Canada's proposed ADA, part of Bill C-27, focuses on high-impact systems, requiring risk management, transparency, oversight, though it's still under review and development.
And the U.S.
The U.S. is a bit more fragmented, with executive action, specific agency guidance like from NIST, ongoing legislative debates, but maybe less comprehensive federal law so far compared to the EU's direction.
Okay, so principles and laws. What about technical fixes?
There's a lot happening there, too. Researchers are building tools for bias detection and mitigation ways to find and reduce unfair bias in data and models.
We talked about explainable AI methods.
Right. XAI techniques to make models less of a black box, and privacy-enhancing technologies, federated learning, differential privacy, homomorphic encryption are developing rapidly.
And making AI tougher.
Yes, work on robustness and adversarial training aims to make AI systems less brittle, more secure against attacks.
Are there other approaches, maybe more procedural?
Definitely. Ethical audits and impact assessments are becoming more common. Think of them like environmental impact studies, but for AI ethics, trying to anticipate and evaluate risks before deployment.
And within companies.
We're seeing more internal governance structures, Ethics review boards, dedicated chief ethics officers, a push for ethics by design, baking ethical considerations in from the start, not just bolting them on at the end.
Sounds like it needs everyone involved.
Absolutely. Multi-stakeholder engagement is key. Bringing developers, researchers, policymakers, ethicists, lawyers, civil society groups, and the public together is crucial for developing workable and legitimate solutions.
So zooming out a bit, why is all this focus on AI ethics so fundamentally important for our future?
Oh, it's critical on so many levels. Firstly, building public trust. If people don't trust AI systems, especially those making important decisions, they won't accept them. Ethics is foundational for that trust.
Makes sense.
Secondly, guiding innovation. Ethics helps steer development towards genuinely beneficial applications, things that tackle real global problems, not just, the next addictive app or potentially harmful tool.
Preventing harm.
Yes, risk mitigation. It's about proactively identifying and reducing the potential downsides, discrimination, privacy breaches, safety failures before they cause widespread damage.
You mentioned fairness earlier, too.
Promoting equity is huge. The goal should be for AI to reduce inequality, not make it worse. An ethical focus helps ensure that.
And the really long-term view.
Addressing long-term concerns. It gives us the framework to think about profound societal shifts, the future of work, human identity, the implications of highly autonomous systems. We need that ethical lens to navigate what's coming.
It all sounds essential, but also incredibly challenging. What are the biggest roadblocks to actually putting AI ethics into practice effectively?
Yeah, despite the progress, there are major hurdles. One is just operationalizing principles. Turning abstract ideas like fairness or transparency into concrete code or specific design requirements is really hard.
The translation problem.
Exactly. Then there are ethical trade-offs. Often, optimizing for one value hurts another. More accuracy might mean less fairness sometimes. More transparency could compromise privacy or security. Making those trade-offs is difficult.
And the speed of change.
Rapid technological change is a constant issue. The tech evolves faster than ethical frameworks or laws can often keep up. It's a moving target.
And globally.
Global divergence. Different countries, different cultures might prioritize values differently, making it hard to agree on global norms or standards.
Is enforcement still a problem?
Lack of enforcement is definitely a challenge. Many guidelines are voluntary, and even with laws emerging, building effective oversight and enforcement mechanisms takes time and resources.
Anything else?
There's also a skills gap. We need more people trained in both AI technology and ethical analysis, people who can bridge that gap. That expertise is still relatively scarce.
Wow. It's definitely a complex, ongoing effort then. This has been incredibly illuminating. Thank you for breaking down such a critical area. It really drives home how much we need to stay engaged with this as AI evolves.
Absolutely. It's not static. It requires constant vigilance, ongoing dialogue, and a commitment from everyone involved, developers, users, policymakers, to steer it responsibly.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive for today. A huge thank you for sharing your insights.
My pleasure.
And a big thank you to you, our listeners, for joining us to explore the vital landscape of AI ethics. We hope you found it valuable. If you did, please do consider subscribing to the channel. It really helps us grow and continue bringing you these in-depth conversations about the forces shaping our world. Thanks again for listening.